Hello, Star Trek fans, and welcome to the Rebinge Deep Space Nine podcast. My name is Kim.
And my name is James.
And we're watching Star Trek Deep Space Nine from the beginning, one episode at a time. Welcome back to the podcast. Today we are on Season 5, Episode 15, By Inferno's Light. This episode aired February 17th, 1997. Before we get started on this one, anything to say about part one of this two-parter?
It was perfect.
Our podcast was perfect, not necessarily the part one.
I think the part one was a good episode. And it's great to see we have another stunning name, Inferno's Light. You can just almost see that emboldened.
Yeah, it's funny, though, these aren't called part one and part two, but there was a to be continued at the end of the previous episode, and we get a last time on here, so I'm going to call it a two-parter. Well, in the last time on, we are reminded how we got here with the internment camp on a Gamma Quadrant asteroid, and that there was some sabotage allowing for the Dominion fleet to come through the wormhole.
And that Julian Bashir is a changeling.
Yes, that was the big dramatic reveal in the previous episode.
Yep.
Well, let's get started. In the cold open, many Dominion ships come through the wormhole. Dax and Kira get to the Defiant, and some of their other ships, plus Dukat's stolen Klingon ship, all get into position for a fight.
It's rather pathetic, let's be honest. There's like two runabouts, the Defiant, which is actually pretty awesome, and Dukat's stolen Warbird.
Yep.
And all these ships. I actually counted 51 on screen.
Yikes. Yeah, and when looking at all the ships, Dax says, there sure are a lot of them, and Kira responds, that'll just make it harder for us to miss.
She's been hanging out with Worf. I'm sure of it. That's a Klingon attitude.
I thought that was probably the kind of thing that the Resistance had to tell themselves frequently to keep hope alive.
Oh, that's a good point. That is true.
You had to always look for the positive.
Yeah, hopelessly outnumbered by a superior enemy. Yeah, they probably do take that kind of attitude a lot of the time.
I would think so. Well, the Dominion ships do not respond to hails, of course, and before starting any fights, they set a new course and all start heading to Cardassia. Dukat's ship turns and heads to Cardassia with them, and when Kira hails him, he says he's been in secret negotiations with the Dominion and Cardassia is now part of the Dominion. He says, goodbye, Major. You and I on the same side never seemed quite right.
Wow.
What an ass this guy is.
Now that is quite an opening.
Yeah, and Kira immediately wants to shoot him out of the sky, but it's too late and he's gone. That's too bad, because I think a little firefight there would have been interesting.
It would have been, actually. I think it kind of would have cemented something that Kira says later about what the new reality is.
Right. Well, from here, we cue the theme song. After the theme, we check in on the asteroid internment camp, and I'm happy to report that the Breen is now sitting up, and the lights on his creepy helmet are flashing, so I guess he's alive.
Yep, it could be Princess Leia. You don't know.
It could be Princess Leia. Well, they never moved at all in the last episode, so I was concerned that they weren't even alive, but at least he's sitting up, and in a different bed. He also moved.
Well, you didn't have to pay the extra if you just had, a Breen costume sitting there.
That's a good point. And I guess you could put anyone in there. You could even put one of your regulars in there, and then you don't have to pay somebody.
That would be pretty funny.
Or the director is in there or something.
Yeah.
Martok and Bashir show Garak and Worf where Anabrantane built his transmitter. It's through a hole in the wall and into a very dark, very tight space. Worf suggests they find a way to contact their abandoned runabout and activate the transporter. Garak says it won't be easy. One circuit at a time will have to be configured. And Bashir says Garak is the only one who can do it because no one else is an engineer. So I imagine it's another one of those things where they have to pull the little cards out and put it back in different slots.
Oh, right.
We've seen that many times on Star Trek.
Always a favorite with Federation technology.
That's right.
Don't you think this is a bit of a jump, though, with Worf of the abandoned runabout? Wouldn't you think the Jem'Hadar or the Vorta would have made them put the runabout somewhere safe, or maybe just destroyed it?
Yeah, I think the assumption that the runabout is just sitting somewhere waiting for you to use it is quite a leap.
Yeah, or dock it somewhere and pull it apart to find any Federation secrets they don't have.
No, I agree with that.
Although this could come back to, that arrogance that the Dominion, the Vorta, and the Jem'Hadar, that they're inferior. why would we even bother with their equipment or whatever, unless specifically ordered by the founders?
Right.
Because, these are lesser races.
And maybe it's possible they just sort of leave it there because maybe they'll use it later or maybe they'll find a use for it later.
Ah, right. So it could be just hanging out in orbit.
Right.
I will take those as good headcanon.
Well, then there's a call for all prisoners to assemble, and we meet Deos, the Vorta who runs the camp. Looks a lot like Weyoun, actually. He announces that Cardassia has joined the Dominion, and all the Cardassians are being sent home.
A lot of very confused Cardassians there.
Yeah, that would have made me very nervous when he said all the Cardassians come to the front. I would have been like, for the firing squad? But no, they're sending everyone home except for Garak, because the new head of the Cardassian government doesn't like Garak. And he's like, oh, who is that? Gul Dukat.
Oh, that
Garak's
was
like,
very good.
Great.
That's interesting that he called him Gul Dukat. Surely you would think there would be a higher ranking for the head of the Cardassian government.
Yeah, you would think he would be President Dukat or whatever the admiral equivalent was. I think it was legate. It did seem strange. I suppose it's because he doesn't have two names. At least we don't know what his other name is. And so if he'd said like Bob Dukat, we would have gone, who's that?
Oh, I think I've got it. It's that Dukat false modesty. This is a lowly gull, are now running the whole empire.
No, I don't think so. I think he'll have a new title next week. Supreme Chancellor. Some baloney.
Yeah.
Now we go to Cardassia, and unbelievably, for at least the third time, we see the same two Cardassian dudes standing on the roof of a building while a superimposed video plays on all the visible screens. I can't believe we're using this image again.
Oh, it's not the same image. Just these guys do that every day. It's like 3:00. We got to go to the roof.
Oh my gosh.
They actually did cut this one. It was a little bit shorter.
That's true. But it's still the same scene.
They're getting a lot of mileage out of that footage.
Oh my gosh. Well, this time the video playing is Dukat, and he's saying what a great opportunity it is to join the Dominion. He says the Dominion recognizes us for what we are, the true leaders of the Alpha Quadrant, which is pretty hilarious, as I'm guessing they view themselves as the true leaders of every quadrant.
Well, he does say equal partners.
Yeah. If he thinks he's equal partners with the founders, he is even more delusional than we thought.
Does he actually believe that?
I think he does. I think that's a big problem with anyone who thinks their entire race is superior. They are not rational.
We know the founders have this whole superiority complex.
Yes.
So when he's saying that, he's very genuine, that they think they are equal partners, that the Cardassians are just like the founders. We are naturally superior.
Well, yes, that is what I think. I suppose he also could be playing a political game, like maybe in the negotiations, he knew that Cardassia didn't really have that many cards to play. He could help them the Dominion get into the Alpha Quadrant, but he doesn't have a big army or a big military, and he doesn't have any allies. So there wasn't a lot that he could give. So he might know the truth that they're just a gateway, I guess, into the Alpha Quadrant, but he's using a lot of bluster to show something different.
That is very Cardassian.
Yes. Back at the station now, we're watching the same ridiculous video. Dukat is saying something about his son's birthday being in 5 days, and he says by the time his birthday dawns, there will not be a single Klingon alive inside of Cardassian territory, or a single Maquis colony left within our borders. He says Cardassia will be made whole. When his nonsense stops, Kira says she's going to kill him the next time she sees him.
Finally, as you should have done 5 seasons ago.
Oh my gosh, totally. In that episode where she was stuck on the Klingon warbird with him.
Oh, yeah. Is there a detonate warp core button on here?
Like, can I put it on a time delay, get myself home?
Yeah, exactly.
Cisco has a bigger concern. He wants to know who sabotaged the graviton emitters. Miles says whoever it was, they were pretty thorough, and they made it impossible to seal the wormhole, which is a very convenient hand wave.
Yep.
And the fake Bashir says it's time for a round of blood screenings, which is a waste of time, but I guess he knows that.
Right. They've never worked in the past.
Right.
Actually, they've worked once in the past, and then they were faked in the episode when they were going to destroy the Zenkathi.
As soon as the founders knew about them, they didn't work anymore.
Do you think Changeling Bashir suggested the blood screenings because he knows they don't work?
Yeah, of course. And it looks like he's checking.
They made a really good choice there.
Kira reports that Odo says a Bajoran maintenance engineer has been missing since the Dominion fleet arrived. So maybe it was that guy. Of course, we know better.
Yes.
Cisco calls for blood screenings and phaser sweeps.
My idea here is have Odo go round shaking the hands of all the senior staff.
Totally!
We've seen before that at least one founder cannot hide their contempt for Odo, and he could sense that.
Right.
So if he's in their presence or gets close enough to them, I guess maybe Odo would be able to actually sense that.
Yeah.
I think they're not using Odo enough.
Well, and Odo's not even in this episode.
Yeah.
We talk about him, but we never see him. So Garak has been working in the walls for an hour. He's breathing hard as he says this space would make a good interrogation chamber. Bad lighting, no air, random electric shocks.
Tight quarters.
The Romulan watching the door sees guards coming, and they have to shut Garak into the wall. The Jem'Hadar have come for Worf. After they leave, one of the guards hovers by the door, so they can't open up the wall for Garak. Not that it matters. He seems like he's a long ways from the opening anyway, so I don't even know that opening up that little hole makes any difference.
Yeah, they didn't really show how far it was, but it did seem like it was a bit of a long crawl.
Yeah, you get a little bit more of a clue about it later, but at this point, you don't really know. It seems like he's right inside the wall.
I thought initially, they would just open the panel and he was right behind the panel.
Yeah. Well, outside, we find that Worf is taking over in the cage matches, and his first match is with a lackey, apparently, but still a pretty tough fight for Worf.
Victory is life.
There's a lot of hand-to-hand combat in this episode, which I do not intend to describe in detail, but you can get the idea.
Yeah, they beat each other up.
Exactly. The fight does finally distract the guards near the barracks, so Bashir can let Garak out of the wall finally. And Garak says it was really hot in there, and he was getting lightheaded. And Bashir tries to talk him into taking more frequent breaks.
He looks like he's having some kind of anxiety attack here.
Absolutely.
Andrew Robinson does a great job of portraying how Garak seems very on edge and is trying to downplay it and pretend like it's no big deal. But he really isn't fooling Julian.
Yeah, well, because Julian can tell that his heart is beating really fast and that his blood pressure is high and probably sees him sweating. I think I read somewhere that the actor was actually sick when they did this, when they filmed this. Oh. And he's also sort of claustrophobic. So he said he didn't really have any trouble looking really uncomfortable because he was really uncomfortable. Outside, Worf continues to fight, and he manages to beat the first guy.
Yeah, despite all that, Akatika does tell him that he was their weakest that he just beat.
Yeah.
It's an interesting training technique that the Jem'Hadar are specifically doing that to actually learn skills. The only problem I would see is as they live such very short lives, they would lose any of those skills very quickly. Especially if they treat the Jem'Hadar as like cannon fodder.
Yeah, it's not like most of them will be able to put anything they learn to use.
Right.
It's also just an excuse that this is all they want to do is fight. And maybe this keeps them from just killing all the prisoners.
That's a really good point. That this is a way of controlling the Jem'Hadar.
Yeah.
Distracting them from turning on the founders. Or doing what they did in that other episode, where they rebelled and took over the portal. Things aren't as hunky-dory in the Dominion with the Jem'Hadar as they like to pretend.
Yeah, exactly. Back on the station, Ziyal is looking out the window when Kira approaches. Ziyal is waiting for Garak to come back. She keeps hoping everything will be okay. Ziyal doesn't know what to think about her father now, and Kira tells her you can't judge people by what they think or what they say, only by what they do.
Oh, just tell her, Kira.
Just say he's an evil jerk.
Your father is pure evil.
I know, she doesn't want to hurt her feelings, but geez. A bunch of Klingon ships have arrived at the station, and Gowron calls to ask for some help with wounded soldiers. So now we go to Gowron in the infirmary, saying this is a dark day for the Klingon Empire and the entire Alpha Quadrant.
Yeah, and he's got a burned hand, so he's actually been in battle.
Absolutely. And he says his lines, of course, with a way that only he can deliver.
Robert O'Reilly so gets this character. And I love the way he does that Klingon over-the-topness, where they're making these big statements and where he says his master plan is to pull back to the Klingon borders, fortify and prepare for battle to the death.
Yeah.
And then turns it around and like does the calm, more political Gowron. It's so much fun to watch him play this character.
Yeah, when he says that that's like his only option, Sisko hands him a pad with the Khitomer Accords on it. But Gowron is like, the treaty between the Klingons and the Federation is dead.
He's still in full Klingon mode.
Oh, totally. But Sisko says a Federation task force will be here soon, and the Klingons could bring their fleet here, and they could stand together at the mouth of the wormhole. Suddenly, Gowron is more interested, and he ends up putting his thumbprint on the pad, which I guess is a signature.
Yeah.
And he says, this is my favorite line of the whole episode. He says, think of it, 5 years ago, no one had ever heard of Bajor or Deep Space Nine, and now all our hopes rest here. Where the tides of fortune take us, no man can know.
Oh, I think that speaks beautifully to this sort of weird lyrical side that the Klingons have.
Yeah.
He's writing lines basically for the song of his exploits.
Exactly. Always right on the edge of a musical. I mean, the Klingons, there should be a Klingon musical. They're naturally dramatic. They have these extreme costumes. They're always writing songs. When they speak, it's very lyrical. Come on. That would be great.
Oh, I would have to agree with that. They are very dramatic people. It's great to see that side of Gowron where you see the political leader, where he calmly considers his options.
Yeah.
And basically in like almost a non-Klingon mode, signs the Accords.
Yeah. I've really missed him. He's fun.
Oh, he is. And into overanalysis, I think there's another aspect here, that Gowron is quite a shrewd leader. He'll still be able to fortify the Empire and prepare for war, but now with Starfleet and Federation resources, he'll kind of have the best of both worlds to an extent. He'll be able to have his glorious battle and cement his place in Klingon history, sort of that kind of thing. But at the same time, he'll also have support on his terms.
Yeah, I think it's a good political move for him. At this point, he doesn't have any options.
Yeah, oh yeah, but he could spin this as, they came to me asking for help.
Oh, no, definitely. Yeah, definitely. Did you notice in the scene fake Bashir in the background? He seems a little irked by this.
Yes. I was wondering about that.
Like, whoops, that didn't work. Speaking of fake Bashir, we now see him on a dark runabout messing around with a panel that he is clearly not supposed to be touching. We don't know what he's doing, but he's doing something.
Yes.
And then we go back to the cage match, and Worf continues to beat up Jem'Hadar soldiers, and he wins the 5th match. Martok says, you truly have the spirit of Kahless in you.
I think Worf should have replied, and I held his sword once too.
Yeah, he could say that.
I would like to have seen Martok's reaction.
He'd have been like, oh, you must have a head injury.
Oh.
The Jem'Hadar leader says, until tomorrow, and leaves. He's either impressed with or annoyed with Worf. We're not sure at this point which one it is.
Right.
Back in the barracks, Bashir says Worf has some broken ribs. Even a Klingon body can only take so much punishment. But Worf intends to keep fighting, of course. He would rather die than yield. Martok tells Bashir to bandage up Worf's ribs.
Worf is doing that Klingon thing. Bashir warns him he could die, and his take is, then I will die, but I will not yield.
Yep. And Martok is really impressed with Worf. He's showing so much honor, doing the thing he's supposed to do, not yielding.
He is the epitome of Klingon virtue.
Exactly, especially when so many people are busy telling Worf that he's not Klingon enough. That is not Martok's experience.
Right.
Well, now we go to Garak in the wall, and he is losing it a bit as he's now talking to himself. And he tries to pull it together, but we learn that he's claustrophobic here, as if we didn't already know that.
Yeah.
And this is the exact situation he does not want to be in. His breathing is ragged, and he keeps telling himself to focus on the job. He says, you promised Ziyal you'd come back.
I thought that was so interesting. He was using Ziyal as a motivation.
Yeah.
I found that surprising for Garak, that he was using a bond to another person.
Well, he's in a situation he's never been in before.
Yeah.
He's trying to get out of something and with a bunch of new comrades, and his dad just died, and Now, Bashir knows that Tain was his dad, so he's had a little of this emotional exposure, I think I would say, that he's not at all accustomed to. He's in a whole new world. And also, when you get into that claustrophobic situation, speaking from experience, your brain doesn't always go to its normal places. It goes to very different places when you're just trying to find something that you can hold on to that will sort of keep you from panicking. So I could understand it. It wouldn't necessarily be your normal mode of thinking.
Interesting.
And the extreme close-ups in this scene just made me very uncomfortable. But then the worst thing of all happens and his light goes out. And now he's in the pitch dark. Oh my God, that is the worst.
Yeah. We also get some interesting background on Garak. What was he doing on Zenkathi and why was he being interrogated?
Yeah, we get little clues, but we don't get a lot of detail.
Yeah.
But that's where he learned he was claustrophobic, or maybe that was just the last time he had a claustrophobic attack.
I think that was the implication, yeah. The last time he'd experienced that.
Now out in the room, they hear a banging. And they determine it's coming from Garak. They quickly open the hole in the wall, concerned that the Jem'Hadar soldiers will hear the noise. And Bashir has to climb in to find Garak and pull him out. This, to me, was a rough scene because they really gave you a sense here of how far into the wall Bashir had to crawl just to get to Garak. And we hadn't seen that before.
And the close-ups show how just really tight these spaces are. It gives that great impression.
And when he gets there and he finds Garak just banging on whatever it is, banging on the wall, and Garak is like, the light went out. And Bashir's like, I know, okay, let's go. And he tries to just pull him out of there. And on the outside, everybody now knows about Garak's claustrophobia. Secret's out. You know what I was wondering here was, how in the heck did Tain get in there? Tain had a huge gut, if you recall. I don't know how. He would have slid his way into that narrow space.
Cardassians are like cats.
Oh, my gosh.
As long as they can get their head through, the rest of them can fit.
Oh, sure. Martok, Worf, and Bashir now are wondering who else can do the work because it doesn't look like Garak can go back in.
I think you also see here that maybe this is the Cardassian approach to anything they perceive as a weakness, like maybe claustrophobia or maybe agoraphobia, anything like that. Ignore it and it will go away. You just need to be stronger. They deny when they have a problem.
Well, I think about my brother playing baseball as a kid and getting hit with a ball on his arm and my dad telling him to shake it off. And he tried, but it was broken in the end.
Ouch.
I mean, I feel like this is something a lot of people are told to just be tougher rather than try to deal with something.
Right.
So, yeah.
So you think this might be just Tain's influence rather than a Cardassian trait?
Well, it might be a Cardassian trait, but I think it's an everybody trait. I think it's a human trait.
Yeah.
Maybe we're supposed to believe it isn't in the future, but I don't think so. I mean, I think everybody looks at any sort of an internal problem that they have as a weakness. We're trying to get better about looking at it that way, in 2022, but I think that's really relatively common.
Yeah. Okay.
Back at the station, more Klingons have arrived, and the Starfleet task force is close. Kira comes in to say that Odo reported someone messing with the industrial replicator on level 17. This is the second time we hear Odo told Kira something, but we never see Odo. And by the way, we don't know what was replicated because the saboteur wiped the memory banks, of course. So Sisko calls for more security, including some Klingon troops to guard key facilities.
Why didn't you bring some more troops up from Bajoran knowing that you were in this war footing and you had a changeling on the station? Everything should have been locked down.
Yeah. We are not reacting enough to the fact that there's a saboteur somewhere. I guess the trick was because the fake Bashir killed that one engineer. Yeah. They think like, oh, that must have been him. But really, would you really fall for that? Come on, guys.
Right. What if there were two?
Yeah. What if there's 10?
Then the station will be the Dominion's new outpost within a week.
Right. Well, then Gul Dukat calls. I mean, why even take this guy's calls? I don't get it.
Send him to voicemail.
Dukat says that Sisko has saved his life on more than one occasion, which makes Sisko respond, don't remind me. Love that.
Yeah, sometimes you look back at your mistakes and go, yeah, I shouldn't have done that one.
Why did I do that?
Yeah.
Well, Dukat says he's going to return the favor. I'd watch out for this favor. He says, just convince the Federation to join the Dominion and save billions of lives. Sisko is like, why are you calling? Because we're not going to do that. Dukat says that he wants his station back because it was built by Cardassia. Funny, Sisko says. I thought it was built by Bajoran slave labor.
Oh, great that Sisko can still get a dig in.
Yeah, but Dukat's like, surrender the station or I'll take it by force. And Sisko says he's welcome to try, and then he hangs up.
It's fair to say that Dukat is a little bit drunk on power at this point.
Oh, 100%.
You can just see how full of himself he is.
Well, he wants to get back to his glory days when he could have Bajoran girlfriends anytime he wanted.
Oh.
So gross. Well, now Worf has won 7 battles, which Martok loves.
7 battles, 7 victories.
He says when they return to the Klingon Empire, he will seek out Kidera himself so he can write a song worthy of Worf. And he tells Bashir the healer who bound the warrior's wounds will also be in the song.
The Klingons do love their songs and their stories of battle.
They definitely do, although Worf really is starting to wonder if these fights have a point. And he's wondering how they're going to get out of here now because Garak is incapacitated.
Yeah.
But Garak stands up. He's like, I don't think that song should have a verse about a Cardassian who panicked in the face of danger. And he decides to head back into the wall, calling it his dungeon.
Yes. Excuse me, my dungeon awaits.
Ugh. And Martok says there's no greater enemy than one's own fears. And Worf says it takes a brave man to face them.
I thought that was shockingly understanding of Klingons.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. I wasn't really sure that was the Klingon response.
Yeah.
But maybe that was a real internalized fear that the two of them could relate to. That it's like, okay, You see it, you're afraid, but you're still going to go.
I saw it maybe a little bit differently.
Sure.
Because I thought that the Klingons really aren't so great at hiding their emotions. So if Klingons experienced fear or anxiety, it wouldn't be so hidden. So if you like, the Klingons would be better at learning how to overcome these problems or teaching other Klingons how to overcome their fears to be the greater warrior. And I think it was pointing at maybe the Klingons have a greater emotional maturity in that situation than the Cardassians, which are, just hide them. Just try and hide them. Don't admit to them.
That could be.
Because if the Klingons are seeing something like fear as something you have to overcome, you have to be brave, then they're acknowledging that you've got to do something to, if you like, be brave.
I'm kind of saying the same thing, that they're recognizing that they have fear, but they still have to find a way to push through it. So I feel like we're saying the same thing, maybe just a little bit differently.
Yeah, exactly. That is what I'm saying. But unlike the Cardassians, they're open to it.
Okay. Back on the station, Miles and Bashir have a quick social chat where Bashir says something about darts, and Miles is like, how can you think about darts? But Bashir says, I'm sure everything will turn out for the best.
He's very upbeat.
A little bit, but I guess this was just intended to show that Miles doesn't suspect that Julian is acting strangely, even though this is a very strange conversation in the face of war.
Oh, okay. I was wondering what the point is, but you're right. This is, I think, showing that this changeling duplicates Julian really well. So that even Miles, his friend, is like, I don't see Julian behaving any way out of the ordinary. This is the kind of thing Julian would do.
Yeah.
We're on the brink of war, and you're getting a new dart set.
Yeah. Now we go off to Quark's, where Ziyal is having asparagus with yamak sauce, which sounds terrible. Quark doesn't think his business is going to survive when the Jem'Hadar take over because they don't eat, drink, or have sex. Same with the Founders. And Ziyal says, well, maybe the Vorta will be gluttonous, alcoholic sex maniacs. And Quark is like, oh, this is a cute conversation.
If the Cardassians get the station back, wouldn't there be a load of Cardassians on the station? So yamak sauce would be in demand again.
Yeah, he's not looking at the right things, because absolutely, he could go back to how things were with the Cardassians. Yeah. I don't know, maybe that was bad too. But yeah, he's acting like the Jem'Hadar are moving in.
He could get rid of all that yamak sauce that Rom ordered like 3 seasons ago.
Yep. Well, in Ops, we learn the Federation task force has entered Bajoran space. There's a lot of these really short, little quick things that happen in the, I don't know, maybe last third of this episode. Like maybe they were running out of time and they had to move really quickly.
I thought they did a great job at that, though. All these shortcuts really moved the story along. So that pacing at the end was like, it just ramped up.
And it wasn't confusing. It was very clear what was happening,
Yeah.
and it kept you up to date on everything. And a lot of times when there's a bunch of jumping around, I don't know, I lose focus.
Yeah.
But I followed this. I thought it was really good.
Oh, yeah. They really brought the action level up.
The only thing I didn't like was all the hand-to-hand combat, which we go back to now.
Yeah, you've never really liked that.
No. So we go back to the cage match, and the leader guy is Worf's next opponent. So just when he's exhausted and injured, he gets the toughest opponent.
So yeah, Akatika wants to fight Worf after he's all good and beaten up by all of his men.
Yeah.
I get the feeling this Jem'Hadar isn't actually as good as he claims to be.
Or as honorable.
Oh, well, they have no honor.
In the barracks now, Garak is suffering away in the wall, and he's talking to Tane. And again, I don't know how Tane would have fit in here, but anyway, he's having a conversation with him.
Very tightly.
And out in the cage match, it's just a bloodbath. Worf goes down multiple times.
Yeah, he's not faring so well against Akatika.
You can keep saying it. I don't know. I didn't write it down. Well, now some other Jem'Hadar soldiers enter the barracks looking for Garak, saying that he's to be put to the death. They hit Bashir in the face with the butt of a gun, and eventually they find the tool they used to open the hole in the wall. But then we jump back to the station, and we're getting ready for something. Dax and Kira head to the Defiant, and we deploy all of our ships again. I'm not sure what we were getting ready for at this point. We do see in one of the runabouts, the Yukon, fake Bashir has killed everyone on board, and he's pretending to be one of the dead Starfleet people with his voice. It's very creepy.
That is, I think, the most disturbing thing about the Changelings, where they're even impersonating the voices of other people.
But of course they can do that, because when they turn into the person, they can do that person's voice, I guess.
It's just very creepy.
It's very creepy, yeah, because it makes sense if they completely turn into someone that they have actually even developed their vocal cords and everything exactly the same. But when they're just doing it of other random people, yeah, it's weird. In Ops, Miles is picking up a tachyon buildup when suddenly several Romulan ships decloak. They're requesting permission to join the fleet. That's a surprise. Sisko's like, granted. And then Kira calls to say sensors have detected Dominion and Cardassian ships entering Bajoran space. So something is now on the way.
I admit I did not count how many Romulan ships there were there.
There were a lot of them.
But didn't you think, wasn't in your mind at this point, did you not want Sisko to say, "You are most welcome"?
Yes.
Even though that line is uttered like 4 years after this, I really wanted him to say that.
Oh, that's one of those points in a movie theater I vividly remember because I burst out laughing when he said that. It's like, you are most welcome. Lord of the Rings, number 2. Back in the prison barracks, Bashir continues to avoid answering the question about the tool the Jem'Hadar found, saying maybe it's a self-sealing stem bolt. That's call out number 2 to that episode from season 1, Progress, with the Yamek sauce and now this. But by the way, that is not a self-sealing stem bolt. We've seen them. The Jem'Hadar shoots one of the Romulans and then threatens the female Romulan, but they find the hole in the wall, and so they get distracted, and they use the tool to open it, so Garak quietly shuts off his light. So again, he's in the pitch dark.
Oh, wow. Yeah, it just keeps getting better for him, doesn't it?
We jump back to Worf's cage match, and the leader guy continues to just beat up on Worf, but he will not give up, even though Martok tells him to at this point.
Yeah, Martok says, honor has been satisfied. Stay down.
Yep.
Worf's not having any of that. He does not know Worf if he thinks honor has been satisfied.
Absolutely not.
Shields are down, weapons are out, life support is failing. Worf's response is, ramming speed. Perhaps today is a good day to die.
Well, Garak keeps working as they pull the wall panel off and look inside, but apparently he's so far in they can't see him. Plus, it's dark. They don't have any flashlights.
Yeah, he says, I see nothing. It's dark. At this point, were you thinking of that Jem'Hadar? Oh, he's that guy.
I was thinking, just use your phone. There's a flashlight on your phone.
Yeah. You could use a torch.
Yeah.
I'm assuming his squad leader is like, do I have to tell you everything?
Well, they're only like 4 years old, right? So they don't know.
Oh, that's a thought. Maybe these are like the really useless guys because all the ones who are actually any good are watching the fight to learn things.
Or they're not. They're all on the Dominion ships. They're not guarding a bunch of useless prisoners.
Oh, So this is the equivalent of those Starfleet people they send to Deep Space Nine in season 1.
Yes, exactly. Well, while they're distracted by the hole in the wall, the Breen grabs one of the phasers and shoots the main guard, and then shoots another guard while getting shot himself. Bashir saves the Romulan woman by stabbing the last guard in the throat. The Romulan says, "Never turn your back on a Breen."
Sounds like a good plan. They were pretty tricky there.
Bashir shouts to Garak that he better work fast because they're about to be up to their necks in Jem'Hadar. Outside, Worf goes down again. The Jem'Hadar tells him he's proven his worth. The Vorta tells the Jem'Hadar to finish Worf off, but instead he says, "I yield." He says, "I cannot defeat this Klingon. All I can do is kill him, and that no longer holds my interest." And the Vorta says, "Shoot them both." Just as Garak transports everyone away.
Yep.
We do see the Jem'Hadar soldier, though, being killed, but of course not Worf. And now we go to the runabout, and Worf says to Garak, "You did well." And they share a moment of respect. And all I could think is how badly all these guys must smell at this point.
Yeah. It didn't say what the shower or the facilities were like there. I have the feeling they weren't very good.
I don't think it was good. Are we going to talk about how you really should only be able to transport like 2 people at a time into the runabout?
No.
Okay. I mean, I think it's possible that they just showed it happening at the same time for dramatic effect, and maybe Garak got himself there and then he transported everybody else.
Oh.
But they made it look like it all happened at once. Yeah.
Well, it looked more dramatic that way. The reality,
Exactly.
Yeah, the reality being Garak, transported up, had a shower, made some coffee. Oh, I suppose I should probably rescue the others.
Made himself a drink. Yeah.
Something I want to bring up is, considering the disdain that we've seen the Jem'Hadar have for the Vorta, I mean, they despise them.
Yeah.
I thought it was kind of odd that Ekatika, his troops actually carried out Deo's orders. We've seen before where the Jem'Hadar just shot the Vorta because they didn't like him, basically.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, I agree. The way that it all works is a little confusing. They don't seem to always listen to the Vorta.
Yeah.
Because we've certainly seen evidence of that. But they do seem to always listen to their first.
Right.
The only time we saw a little bit of dissent was when that one guy was trying to break away from the Jem'Hadar, right? And get them all unhooked from the White. But otherwise, we've not seen that dissent from the one. So that does seem suspicious.
Right.
But I don't know.
Or maybe those Jem'Hadar figured out that, wait a minute, he only beats up the prisoners when we've beaten them up first.
Maybe. They're like, dude's not as tough as he looks, or as he claims to be.
Yeah.
Back on the station, they try to get a visual of the approaching Dominion fleet, but there's nothing to see. There's more warp signatures, but still no ships.
Kira reports that the sensors are showing ships all over the place, and Sisko says, some kind of cloaking device? And Miles replies with, I didn't know the Dominion had them. Well, back in the camping episode,
Yep.
the Vorta that beamed off the station, they didn't know where that ship was. And then the combined fleet of the Obsidian Order, then the Tal Shiar, had cloaking devices. The Dominion has penetrated every level of security and infrastructure in Starfleet. It seems odd that if they wanted a cloaking device, they would not have one by now.
Yeah, they would have taken any of the ones off of those ships that attacked last season.
Yeah, exactly.
Sure. Yeah. It was like a throwaway line that was maybe a little clumsy.
Right.
Or maybe clumsy not the right word. It was sloppy, is what it was.
Yes, right. A better response would be, it could be, but it's something new.
Yep. Well, just then they get an incoming message from the Gamma Quadrant. It's Dr. Bashir. Uh-oh. Sisko is like, where's the other Bashir? He's not on the station, and his last known location was Runabout Pad E. And Sisko finally realizes who the saboteur is. He tells Kira to find and destroy the Yukon runabout. And weirdly, they discover that the Yukon is actually headed straight for the Bajoran sun. And then on the Yukon, we see fake Bashir working on some kind of trilithium protomatter bomb. And he's trying to trigger a supernova, which will wipe out the entire fleet, the station, and Bajor. And wouldn't it destroy the wormhole? I was like, I don't know about this plan.
Pretty much everything in the system would be destroyed.
Yeah, so they would destroy their way into the Alpha Quadrant.
I guess if they saw it as a win, it doesn't really matter.
I guess, but they would have then Well, maybe they were prepared for it. They would leave a Dominion fleet there. Maybe there were enough changelings there to take over.
Until they could make contact with the changelings in the Gamma Quadrant.
Yeah. It seemed like a crazy plan.
Yeah.
Well, Kira's like, we need to get a tractor beam on him, take us to warp. Dax protests that they're inside a solar system, but Kira says there won't be a solar system left if we don't do it. So she actually sort of takes over the console, and they swoop in and tractor the shuttle, pulling it away from the sun and letting it explode harmlessly.
Now, did anybody tell Zefram Cochrane that you can't go to warp in a solar system?
Yeah, I think there's another Star Trek movie where they do that as well. So it has happened.
That, I thought, was really sloppy as well. It's like, you can go to warp in a solar system. It's happened before. It would have been better writing if they'd said something like Dax telling her that you can't go to warp aiming directly at the sun. They don't know they could slow down in time or something like that.
Yeah, something like that would have made more sense.
Right.
But maybe there's just some kind of a rule, that we don't do that because it is risky. It's not that it's a thing you can't do.
Oh, okay. It was a little bit going by the book.
Yeah, which the Starfleet person is going to say and the Bajoran resistance fighter is going to ignore.
Yes.
Well, they all realize that the warp signatures were a ruse. It was a trick to fool them into getting as many Klingon and Federation ships as possible nearby. Sisko says Armageddon will have to wait for another day.
I made the assumption that all those fake signals were coming from the runabout. Do you think it was just on the station and timed?
Yeah, I thought after maybe my third watching of the episode, I watched it a third time because we didn't get it recorded in time last week. So we had a big gap in between the two episodes. So I wanted to rewatch it before we talked about it. But in my third watching, I thought it was the runabout because they all disappeared immediately at the same time. Because there wouldn't have been any reason for it to stop doing it on the station because they had intended for the station to get destroyed.
Yeah, agreed.
Well, Garak and Ziyal are reunited, and Ziyal gives him a big hug, which seems to make him very uncomfortable.
Well, she kisses him.
She does. I mean, it's a quick kiss, yeah.
It's quite shocking for Garak.
Apparently. When he's just been waiting for Bashir to do the same thing.
Oh.
In the infirmary, Miles is really annoyed that he's been hanging out with a changeling for 4 weeks, and Bashir is hurt that Miles never even suspected it wasn't him. Miles says, well, he was a lot easier to get along with. Of course, they poke at each other a little bit.
That was a very good poke.
Yeah, we also see Dax and Worf reunited.
And he might even get his opera collection back.
He might.
Most of them, anyway.
And then out on the promenade, standing by some really bright pink and blue banners are Gowron, Martok, and Sisko. I just thought it was funny as they're standing next to these bright colors, having this serious conversation.
Yeah.
But Gowron says there will be a permanent Klingon military presence on the station, and Sisko can pick the commander, so he picks Martok. And then that jerk Dukat calls again to congratulate Sisko on stopping the supernova.
Put it to voicemail. I mean, why are you even taking them? Yeah.
As Sisko says, that would have killed your daughter too, but Dukat has basically disowned her, so he doesn't care.
Yes.
That was pretty easy.
She's no longer his daughter. She made her choices.
Yeah. One man's villain is another man's hero, Captain, Dukat says. Sisko says, you sold out your people to the Dominion, but Dukat says, I did it to make Cardassia strong again. Blah.
Well, he gives another hint here about his mindset when he says, you should see the monument they are building to me in the Imperial Plaza.
Oh, right. Oh, my gosh. He is so full of it.
Oh, yeah.
This is a very dramatic ending, but I mean, I think you made a bad decision, Dukat. I don't think this is going to work out the way you think. But that is the end. I assume you have overanalysis.
Yes, and I think we will start with, there is so much stuff that must have happened off screen I would love to know about. I can just picture Weyoun talking to Dukat, like in To the Death with Sisko.
Oh, yeah.
And asking Dukat the same kind of thing of, how would you like to be the president of Cardassia?
Yeah.
No Decapa Council, no Central Command. And with Dukat, the answer is, okay, sounds good to me.
Yes, please. Yeah, I think it worked on him for sure.
Yeah, exactly. That sort of appeal would, especially if they tailored it to Dukat, he would be on board absolutely no problem.
Agreed.
And leading on from that, I assume that Dukat was also able to convince a faction on Cardassia, probably the military, who saw Dukat's war against the Klingons and idolized him.
Oh, sure.
So I assume the negotiations were just Dukat making sure his people, his supporters, were ready to seize power.
Yeah, he's probably a bit of a rock star to some.
Yeah, exactly. Right.
Yeah, the purists, in double quotes.
Yes. The next thing. I didn't realize this when I watched it originally, but of course, when you come back and watch the whole arc, you pick up other things. I think in the episode Return to Grace, Dukat starts his one-person war against the Klingons.
Yeah.
When the Cardassian government wants peace talks, I'm not sure whether he realizes or discovers, or finally admits to himself, that the Cardassians are not this super powerful race that has this great empire. It is just paint over rust. And that breaks the foundation of what he thinks is true. Because remember, even the defeat on Bajor and forcing them to leave, he sees that as, oh, that was a political decision. When it was like, no, dude, you were defeated. And as a result, this is what led him to this unholy alliance.
That's an interesting take. I don't believe that he would have ever been able to accept or see that it was paint over rust and that it wasn't real. I think he always felt like we will rise again, that we're superior. And if nobody else can see it, then I'm just going to do it myself. I'm just going to prove it, my way.
Yeah.
But I think what he saw was the need for allies. And all of these other ones he recognized as either lesser or would have their own agendas, and he didn't want any part of that.
Yeah.
So he's thinking he's going to take his superiority into the Dominion and really be equal with them. Finally, he's found someone who's as good and strong as the Cardassians.
Oh.
I really think that's what he thinks.
Yeah.
It's hard for me to relate because I don't have an ego quite that big.
I don't think any other creature alive has.
That's right, what he does. But it's hard for me to know how he would think. It's like trying to get into the mind of a criminal. I don't know how to do that either. But that's sort of the way I read it, that he thinks finally some equals, and together we will rule everything. But the reality is everybody else knows that's not how that's going to work. They're going to come in and dominate. They're going to use you in the same way that you use Bajor.
Oh, he think he's completely delusional. I agree.
Yeah.
So you think he has no real understanding of what the Dominion really is?
No, I don't think so.
Interesting. Okay, next one. Changeling Bashir.
Yeah.
Have we seen changelings willing to sacrifice themselves before? He didn't seem to have an escape plan.
He didn't have an escape plan. I was wondering that same thing. I think we were supposed to see that it wasn't emotional to him. He was just like, this is what I'm doing.
Really? I thought it seemed strange that one would sacrifice himself.
It didn't seem necessary.
Yeah.
Like he could have beamed off and just let the runabout go into the sun on its own. Yeah, I was wondering that same thing. And maybe he did get beamed off, but by some invisible ship that we couldn't see, just like before. Well, we'll never know because they're all faceless.
So you think the runabout was the bomb? There wasn't something which would be the bomb to be deployed?
Oh, I hadn't thought about that. I guess it's possible he was going to actually shoot something out and then fly away. But how long was the supernova going to take?
That's a good question. I assume quickly enough to destroy the ships.
Exactly. So he wouldn't have had an opportunity to fly away, if that's the case.
Yeah.
So I don't think there was an escape plan.
Wow.
I think that was his mission.
That's scary if that founders are happy to do that.
Suicide bombers. Yeah, that's scary.
Next thing. Why are they still using blood screenings?
Yeah.
We know it doesn't work, so we're going to keep doing it.
Pointless. So pointless. Although I was wondering, do they know it doesn't work?
Yes. Martok.
They must know because they did Martok, yeah.
And Martok did the whole cutting his hand in front of them.
I don't know. Sisko's dad told him.
Sisko's dad warned him a long time ago, yeah. Listen to your dad.
Well, I mean, he did say blood screenings and phaser sweeps.
Yeah.
They need a better way to identify them clearly. It's still not working.
Especially with the senior staff. How about just an implanted tracking device for the senior staff?
Oh, that's a good idea. I guess we weren't doing that kind of thing in the 90s. We would certainly do that now. Yeah, but they could take the implanted device too and just
give it to someone else.
Replicate it or whatever. They need some way of being able to tell if somebody is a changeling or not.
Odo shaking hands.
Hey, that was my idea from the beginning, was that Odo just becomes the floor, and every time they walk by, he tries to merge with them, and if it works, you know it's a problem. The other option is you just shoot everybody. Just stun them and see what happens.
Turn to go. They're a founder.
I don't know what else to do. There has to be some scientific way to do it. I mean, the Cardassians were working on that thing where it would stop them from being able to shapeshift.
Oh, that's true.
But even that didn't necessarily identify them. It just made them
go kind of flaky.
No, that's not what happened. He turned flaky because he couldn't go into the bucket and rest and regenerate.
So yeah, over long enough time, you could actually spot
They would start to flake. Yeah, exactly.
Next thing.
Yeah.
So I think if the founders had more sense, they would have more than one Julian copy. So the Julian on the asteroid would be another changeling pretending to be Julian.
Or they left another Julian behind on the station so that when the other Julian called, he'd be like, no, he's the changeling.
Yeah,
I'm the real one.
I think they're not putting enough changelings into subversive roles.
Well, I think they found they don't have to.
That's true.
Just one or two are causing chaos.
Yeah. I guess that's part of the point, that maybe they've always succeeded in the past using this approach, and they don't seem very open to change.
No.
Or expanding their horizons.
No.
Okay, so after all that, my final point.
Yeah.
We have a combined fleet, probably unprecedented in history, of the Klingon Empire, the Romulans, and Starfleet.
Yep.
The Dominion has effectively declared war, tried to destroy Bajor, Deep Space Nine, and the combined fleets.
Yep.
You're at war. Why? Before the Dominion consolidate their position in Cardassian space and fortify and do all of these other things, why do they not attack now? When they have this fleet, when they have this momentum on their side, you're already at war. Just waiting gives the Dominion time to prepare. The first order should be go to Cardassia, wipe it all out now, because they're not going anywhere. They're just going to get stronger the longer you wait.
Well, the Dominion hasn't actually done anything.
What?
I would argue Dukat is the one who made a big stink about how I'm going to make Cardassia whole and take everything back and kill all the Klingons and kill the Maquis.
Well, the Cardassians then. The Cardassians effectively have declared war.
No, I agree.
So what are you waiting for?
Yeah, no, I don't know. It's a good question.
Were they waiting for Picard to turn up and give them a speech?
Yes, they were waiting for someone to give them a stern talking to. No one has given that founder woman a stern talking to. She just needs a speech, and then she'll be better.
And maybe this is the difference in mindset with the Federation, of they don't go there, that they don't think that.
Yeah.
This is the change in the universe, or the Starfleet Federation way. We don't immediately go on an offensive war.
I also think many times we've talked about this over the course of all these episodes of this show, but the people back in Paradise seem very comfortable in their paradise, and Deep Space Nine and the wormhole seem so far away that they're just like, that's happening way over there. It's not that big of a deal. They're not really a threat. Do you know what I mean? It's just incompetence and being comfortable in your little space and not looking at what the real problems are. In this case, on the other side of the quadrant, but this is what happens on Earth, right?
Yeah. Who cares what happens there?
But geez, they should have learned something from the Borg. But they did say last week that Starfleet was depleted from the...
They were stretched thin because
thing
of
with
the
Borg.
And
So maybe that's what we're supposed to believe, that they can't go on a full-on offensive because they don't have the ships.
That's interesting.
Because a lot of ships got destroyed in First Contact.
And with that wraps up my overanalysis. Over to you, Cam.
Well, I just want to say that I knew Dukat was up to something.
He's always up to something.
I think I said it last week that he was up to something because he was saying, I can't tell you, there's big change coming on Cardassia. I didn't know it was this, but I knew he was up to something. He is horrible. I'm really shocked he didn't kidnap his daughter and force her to come to Cardassia with him. I guess he wasn't really prepared to sacrifice anything for her.
Well, it might have tipped his hand.
But he could have just knocked her out and taken her. That seems more in line with something he would do, but
Right.
I don't think he really cared.
Oh, that's really harsh. Yeah, you're probably right. He cares up to a point.
He doesn't need her anymore. He's in charge now, and he
Oh.
needed her before when he didn't have any allies. Then he could pretend like he was a loving father, but no, he's just Dukat. My second point is, why would they leave the runabout just floating around with no security measures in place, which we talked about. But what I did rate in my overanalysis was, like, put a boot on it or something so it can't fly
Disable
away.
it. Yeah. Yeah, maybe you should do that.
2 other points.
Go.
Why did fake Bashir bother turning in Garak at the beginning of the first episode?
I think because of the risk that if Garak went on this mission, that he would discover the fleet.
Oh, and so you think he thought Sisko would stop him, not that he would let him go.
Yes, exactly.
Okay. And then my last note just says locusts.
Oh, completely.
I was editing the podcast yesterday for Rapture because we were recording a few weeks ahead of our releases. And this is the episode where Sisko gets the electricity zap while he's trying to solve the 20,000-year-old puzzle of Bahala.
Yeah.
And in that episode, he talks about the coming Dominion War, but he specifically talks about locusts, like a cloud of locusts
Filling
covering the
sky.
sun.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then it turning and going to Cardassia, because he says something like, oh, they were going to Cardassia. And was that what this was?
Completely.
This was the locust?
Yep.
Interesting. I would have forgotten that if I hadn't just coincidentally been editing that episode, because I was like, wait a minute.
It showed how accurate his predictions were.
He ought to be writing these things down. These are prophecies.
Sisko's book of
These
prophecies.
are just as confusing as any other prophecy that they've read.
Yeah, these really are pretty solid Bajoran prophecies. They're almost impenetrable in what they mean.
Absolutely. All right, well, let me go to women in the future. The female Romulan in the barracks, she survived. That was good. And she seemed to be doing a pretty good job being part of the team and fending off an attacker, so that was all good. Dax didn't do any of her weird whining in this episode that she did in the previous episode. So I appreciate that because that was really lame, and I didn't like that at all. I thought she was written really badly in the last episode, but it was good here. Kira was her usual intense self, but she must just be kicking herself for helping Dukat in the past and not just stabbing him when she had the opportunity before.
Yep. She had command of the Defiant.
Well, that's her normal job. That's kind of my point, is when they just do their normal jobs, I'm happy. But otherwise, really not much else to say about women in the future, so I'm just going to go to rating. Thumbs up, thumbs down, or neutral. What is your rating?
Absolute thumbs up. Really enjoyed this episode. I have seen this episode many times. It's really enjoyable. So many good things happened. I think it really builds the story and it wonderfully displays the true nature of Dukat. And it basically sets the stage for the rest of the show.
Yeah, thumbs way up. Very fun, very dramatic. I didn't like the hand-to-hand combat stuff, but it wasn't too brutal for me, though I admit I fast-forwarded through it because I can't watch stuff like that.
Right.
But I really love everything that this sets up for the future. So I look forward to it.
Excellent. Both thumbs up.
All right. That wraps up Season 5, Episode 15. Come back next week for Episode 16. In the meantime, if you'd like to send us your own overanalysis of this or any episode, or if you just want to say something nice, you can email us at rebingeit@gmail.com or tweet us at rebingeit. We're also on Instagram and YouTube at rebingeit. You can check us out on talkthroughmedia.com, where you can leave feedback for individual episodes, and you can also listen to the other Star Trek podcasts in our network.
Thanks for joining us on the Rebinge Deep Space Nine podcast.
That's it for me.
And that's it from me.